Seems like it's, I'm still thinking we got a lot of time.
So, if you don't mind, do you have an agenda?
I didn't put together an agenda itself, but the other thing we talked about, I guess the next thing we need to think about is anything for Wendy. Has she communicated with you, Tracy,
Yeah.
anything more that we need?
Yeah, so I've got stuff. So she says that she has secured the Wasatch Open Space Bond.com website. And it can go live on Thursday. We don't want it to go live yet, but it'll be up.
It's ready to go.
And she's going to send us a PDF of just what the front page looks
Cool.
like, and we can read it and everything. And then I've got a video that she sent me today, and I'll talk while I'm getting it up. But so she's going to want us to look over the PDF, see what we think.
Great.
She was talking that she needed the bond language to really go live with this. We need to have it all, at least have the bond language and the numbers before we go live anyway. So I'm thinking it'll probably go live after August 7th or the 25th or whenever we can get this passed and set in stone. Then the website will go live. I had a meeting with Cortland Nelson too,
Great.
like 3 weeks ago, a little while ago before he left town, but the point I kind of just woke up one morning and went, we've got to work with Midway. We've got to advertise together for Midway voters, because if we're pushing, and they're pushing, and Midway voters are getting multiple things, they're so confused. I tried to explain it once to a Midway resident that I've known for years, and she cares about this stuff, and she was so confused. And it's like, boy, we've got to be careful, you know.
Yeah.
So
That's my biggest concern at this point, is the Midway bond.
yeah. And
Everything I'm hearing, kind of the word on the street, the buzz is, I think there's a lot of support for the Midway bond, not a lot of support from Midway residents for this bond.
Well, and, you know, that's what we just thought, we got to work together. I was supposed to meet with their open lands board by tomorrow, and I haven't heard anything. They wanted me to come over and just talk to them about what we're doing or how to communicate, and I was talking to Wendy about that, going, they're going to send out mailers, Utah Open Lands. They want to do 2 different mailers.
One for Midway City and one.
No, 2 different times.
Oh, I see.
So one like beginning August and another one mid-September or something like that. 2 different, like,
For each bond?
yeah, countywide.
Okay.
The only reason why it's for each bond is that I think we should tag Midway's bond in with our mailers to Midway voters. I really don't think Midway bond should be advertising separately from us. So that's all I was saying to Wendy is, and I'm trying to save them money too, because this is coming out of their budget. And I don't know if Midway City's gonna want them to promote their bond at some point. It's like, you know what, Midway residents, Midway voters just should get one postcard with both bonds on it, on one postcard, so they can actually have it with them at the ballot while they're filling it out. They can go, okay, wait, here's this ballot, you know. They're gonna be so confused with all the state initiatives and all that stuff. There's so much on the ballot. So that's all I was talking to Cortland about, is maybe we should seriously try and target those Midway voters and let them see both bonds on a postcard. Because quite honestly, when they see them together, like you said, I think ours is gonna look better.
I think it will. I mean, the
But
vibe I got from Cortland, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, Tracy, but the vibe I got from Cortland and the vibe I did meet with the Midway
open space,
Lands board once, but it was like 2 months ago.
okay,
The vibe I get from them was, you know, they're happy we're doing a bond, but they don't think it does enough for Midway City.
right.
Because we won't guarantee that some portion of that bond would be spent in Midway City limits, right? Like the vibe, what I understood from them was, yeah, we would scrap our bond if you'd go for the full 15 million and guarantee that 5 million
Right.
of it or whatever is gonna come to Midway City, and what we had to say was, yeah, that's not the way it's gonna work, right? I mean, I think.
Well, at least, I mean, yeah, we can't guarantee anything.
Can't guarantee it, right? That's why I said, I mean, if it's a viable
We might
project, and
decide
you bring it
at some
forward
point,
and.
but,
Yeah, that's the vibe I get too.
Okay.
well, and so,
So I don't know how that plays into this, I mean, I guess.
well, and I think when Katie Noble talks about, you know, if you vote no on both, we both lose. And if you vote yes on both, we all win. And it's kind of that, let's, you know, if you vote no on this and yes on this, then Wasatch wins and Midway loses. And she had like this chart, you know, of just how it all pans out. And so I think, I truly believe if voters are confused, they're gonna vote no, period. They're gonna vote no. If they don't understand what it's all about, they're gonna vote no.
Sure.
So in my mind, that's what I was talking to Cortland about, and that's what I was coordinating with Wendy to go, before you start mailing out postcards,
Sure.
we need to see them, obviously, and she's like, of course, but then why don't we put both bonds on the Midway voter? So that was kind of what I was talking to Cortland about. Cortland seemed okay with it. He understood, you know, that we've got some challenges, both Midway and us, so.
Yeah, he's done his own canvassing, and I think has had the same reaction. I think he talked to him about it once, and he said he talked to like 8 people, Midway residents, about the bonds generally, and all 8 said that, you know, they would vote no on both bonds before they would vote yes on both bonds, or something along those lines. If there were 2 bonds, they would, there's no way they would do 2 bonds, basically,
Yeah.
is what they were saying.
Right.
Which then becomes a concern, right?
Well, and at this point, it's kind of a done deal. It's out of our hands.
It is.
They're gonna do what
It
they're
is,
gonna
yeah.
do. And so that's why I mean, that's just my obvious personal opinion, but it's almost like then you give them all the information together, they feel like they have a well-rounded plan of what they're gonna do before they get their ballot, you know what I mean? Because if they don't know either and they see everything they've gotta decide on that ballot, by the time they see that second bond, they're gonna vote no on that second bond, no matter what it was.
Well, that's huge, I think, and if you can coordinate with the Midway board, if they're willing to do that, I think that would be awesome, you know, but
I think they are.
yeah,
I think they realize that
that'd be great.
Yeah, I think they are.
Midway voters have to vote for 2. I mean, that's
it,
not
right?
easy.
I mean, that's not easy.
And if you own a business in Midway, then you're getting taxed 3 times.
Or
Or,
investment property,
yeah,
yeah,
that's tough.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But we also got some other problems. We're gonna have a major increase for the law enforcement.
Sure.
Yeah.
And probably we're gonna have something with the fire after this new needs assessment,
Oh, yeah.
increase.
Um,
There's gonna be quite a tax increase overall, and I don't know what the schools will do,
well, and this is right now, they're not doing anything this year.
aren't they?
I haven't heard anything.
But I think it's imminent within the next couple of years.
Right, so you might as well throw everything else on the air when they're not gonna do it, but,
One thing I think could strengthen our argument is being able to rattle off specific properties that could fall under the county bond, this, easement, because the argument that I think like Mike Peterson would make, or others would make, would be, well, if this is focused primarily on the North Fields, and we know that it's not, but the North Fields already has that zoning in place, let's just preserve the zoning. We don't have to bond a dime for it. I think that's the argument, and I'm already hearing that a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, definitely.
So what's our response to that? Well,
Well-
it's not just the North Fields, it's, what are the
Yeah,
other big
but-
pieces?
go ahead, Steve.
Yes, any of the rural open land.
And the North Fields is not built out. I mean, it's 1 for 20, and right now out there, there's probably 1 house per 100 acres.
Yeah.
But the
So
thing
if it's truly
too,
built out, the North Fields would look very different than what it does today, you know?
and there's some lots of record in there that are 10 acres. They're not all 20-acre spreads, so.
It's impossible to.
There's like 6 and 7 acre
But
lots.
my argument would be, very few councils, whether it's city or county councils, likes to tie the hands of future councils. And I think that's the toughest argument, is to say, well, let's just keep the zoning. If we've seen anything in the last 15, 20 years in the county, is zoning keeps changing all the time. Good luck trying to get your buddies on the county council not to vote for rezones.
There's
How do you
limitations
do
on your
that?
ability
There's
to
no way to
future.
tie another county councilman to saying you're not gonna do that. I mean, the bylaws and the laws, the county codes and the state codes allow for those changes. So I don't see how you can bind a future council to say, okay, that's never gonna get rezoned. Whereas a conservation easement is forever.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who owns that property.
And I think one of the good selling points of this is another tool to give the property owners a way of capitalizing and getting some benefit out of the property without a zone change, without a change
Exactly.
of use or development.
And it keeps the farm in the family, instead of forcing them to have to sell.
Yeah, you know,
No, I
I'm a
know, but
believer.
I know you get it, but those are the arguments I'd say, is look, you know, here's three things. We're actually helping these farmers keep their land.
It kind of came up, I mean, this
You know?
did come up in the last county meeting, and when I pointed out Wolf Creek as a win, you know, in terms of conservation easements, I think it was Mike that said, what are you talking about? Like, that was their 160 acre per lot is what the zoning was, so there's no win there, right? And it's like, well, no, but you have to look 3 steps down the road. It's unlikely that in perpetuity, that area would stay like that, right? And that's to your point, right? Over time, you know, development would be allowed because of the increased density around it. And there's arguments that then those landowners have that, hey, you know what, actually under the general plan, I should have more density, or, you know, that things will change. And there's good policy reasons why you don't tie the hands of future councils. But yeah, this gives us something like that. I think we have good arguments in favor. I like your point, Ryan, of pointing to specific properties where this can be benefited. But
That can be a positive
and a negative.
Yeah,
That's
I could
what I
see
was
that.
gonna say.
As
Is
soon as you say, I'm gonna buy Larry Gert's property, you're gonna have half of Midway say, hell with that, I'm not voting him to have any more money.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of going to be my point, was it's a double-edged
Fair
sword,
enough,
right?
fair
It
enough.
becomes dangerous. So I like the idea of using hypotheticals more than pointing to a specific.
Okay.
And we don't know what landowners
Are going
are gonna come up in the next year who totally blow some of the people that we've been talking to out of the water. If somebody, some other seller, or landowner, I should say, comes to the table with more of a donation to the process, then they move up in the list, you know, and in the queue.
I
And
think there will
so,
be surprises, like developers, you know, I was talking to a friend the other day that's looking at developing a piece in the back of the Heber Valley, and, you know, we just, and I mentioned to him, you know, if you're gonna do that, you should look into conservation easements and a portion of this, because it's 120 acres and wants to, he's a younger guy like me, likes to farm, and so wants to break it up into pieces that are still farmable and others. So I could see a situation like that, you know, there may be developers that will come forward and say, I'm gonna develop this out, but it's in a 1 acre zone, instead I'm gonna do 10 acre parcels or 5 acre parcels. I wanna lock up every single one of those parcels in a conservation easement before I sell them, right? I mean, there's a lot of creative opportunities that, you know, haven't come up yet that will come up. But that's why I've always counseled against locking ourselves down on any way that we're gonna use this.
yeah,
But
because
we
we
still need to
can't
promote it in the past,
anticipate
right?
who's gonna come to the table, you know?
So did,
This is what Wendy sent. If you want to move over that way, the sound isn't the best. I've got it queued clear up, but it's not very loud, so. But this is just one that she did explaining.
those videos that we talked about making.
Open space. These are farm fields, and mountain views, intervention, irrigation. It is the place we call home. For many of us, open space is where we grew up. For others, it's why we chose to move here, and for some, it's why we came back.
East,
As the fastest growing county in the nation, Wasatch conservation easements don't happen overnight. Sitting around the kitchen table, a landowner family comes to the decision that the greatest legacy they can leave the next generation is what was left to them, family land. But how? Let's look at an example. Let's take a landowner who owns an 80-acre parcel and desires to donate a conservation easement. For the purposes of this exercise, let's assume that the conservation easement value is $1,000 per acre. So in essence, they donate a conservation easement worth $80,000. Their adjusted gross income is $50,000 per year. According to IRS regulations under 170H, where the conservation easement tax law exists, they claim 50% of their adjusted gross income for up to 16 years, or until they reach the financial value of the gift that was donated. In this case, they can claim $25,000 a year, 50% of $50,000. Up to 3 years, and then a further $5,000 in the 4th year, because by that 4th year, they will have reached and used the entire $50,000. Now, let's take a look at a rancher or farmer who qualifies and who owns the same amount of property in the same amount of acreage and pays the same value. Let's assume that their adjusted gross income is also $50,000 per year. If the farmer or rancher is a qualifying farmer or rancher, that means that they can't use 100% of their adjusted gross income for up to 16 years, or again, until they reach the financial amount that was donated. In this case, they can claim $50,000, so the entire income in the first year, and a further $30,000 the following year, based on the fact that they will have used the entire $80,000. Communities that have raised open space bonds provide landowners with options that maintain the character of the community, while affording landowners that peace of mind. A conservation easement may be purchased by a conservation organization at its fair market value, purchased at a fraction of its fair market value, or donated by the landowner. The landowner still retains the right to use their land as they have for generations, and even sell the land while a conservation easement remains intact, restricting development necessary to preserve the conservation values forever.
I think that's great.
What'd you think?
Yeah.
Was it
Wow.
long, too long?
I don't think so.
Just
because
about a little bit of
Someone
pretty
who's not, who
pictures
doesn't really
and-
care about that, they're gonna click off once it gets into the numbers, but I think someone who's actually
Yeah,
in a
figuring out
position
how
where
does
that
this
benefits
work.
them, it's like, wait a second.
It's kind of in a sweet spot for time.
Okay,
I like it.
good. She's got a few other, like with landowners talking about stuff and everything, so that'll be more of, people into it. One thing we were wondering about is, can we get Brent to give us a list of registered voters and their addresses so that Utah Open Lands can actually send the postcards to voters instead of just a mass mailing of everybody? Can we get a list of registered voters in there?
I would think so.
I would think so.
So, I mean, I can ask Brent tomorrow
Yeah.
and I'll tell him to talk to you
Yeah,
if he's asking questions,
Yeah,
but,
that's yeah.
but that way, then they just target the voters and they're not,
Cost savings.
Yeah.
that's all I've got. The other thing is, I've set up all those meetings
Okay.
for.
The public house or the?
Yeah, all the dates I gave you. The only one that the public safety building,
Mhm.
Heber Public Safety Building couldn't do was the last one, October 9th, I think, or the 12th. So we need to do it somewhere else. We could do it in Midway. I can check and see if we could do it at the town hall or whatever. But I just set the rest of them up at the public safety building just as a backup. And then if we want to take one of those out and go somewhere else, we can always cancel at Heber. But at least we've got all those done. But I was just checking to see, the last one that Heber couldn't do was October 9th. So, the no-brainer would be to have it in Midway, just
I
because
agree.
of their situation. But, and I'm sure they'll have their own,
Yeah.
but we might want to collaborate with them on those two and just say, you know what, if you guys have scheduled some, tell us
So that we can make it a
so that we
joint
can
effort,
make
yeah.
them joint efforts and we're not, again, dividing and conquering. We need to make it as clear and concise as possible for them. So October 9th is a Tuesday. So I can check with, you know, Celeste or the
Yeah.
Hebrew, or the Midway City Council or somebody to figure out, maybe we could do the October 9th one over there. And then if for some reason, I don't know if we want to go anywhere else really, Wallsburg for, I was wondering if they have this town meeting, we could go at the end of their town meeting or something that they're already showing up for. Is there anything going on in Wallsburg, like any kind of,
No, we need to get Mike Nelson back on his development. That would bring a lot of them back in.
Yeah.
But the town meetings I showed up to, there's been
three people? or
3 of the
something?
4 city councilmen there. And
Well, what's that
Considering
big?
they forgot to hold elections in the past 2 cycles.
yeah,
Yeah.
No.
So,
They forgot to hold elections.
that ended up on CNN.
I didn't even hear about it, that's awesome.
That was like 10 years ago or something,
Oh, it's
though, wasn't
like
it?
3
8?
years.
It was only like 3.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It feels like 10.
last election.
Yeah.
Oh,
Who needs an election when they're doing a great job?
They didn't, nobody signed up
isn't there
to
a,
run, so they didn't hold it.
you kind of forgot about it. But there's not, isn't there like a big car show over there, or has that already happened?
That's already happened. Well,
I'm just-
Erickson's,
Yeah.
but that's more of a senior citizen type.
Yeah, but they're the ones that vote. I mean, I'm just saying, if we're
Well-
gonna try to get Wallsburg, you know, just to hit them once, because will they really come over to Heber for a meeting? I don't know if they bother, but, and then, I don't know if we showed we went over there to talk to them, that might,
See what Spencer could get set up.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That'd be
yeah,
good.
he's on this committee, maybe he
Yeah.
could go, hey, let's
Yeah.
put something together, I mean, let's have some pizza and some, you
Yeah.
know, dinner for them and potluck or something and, you know, make it like
Well,
an
it's-
evening
It's
kind
Utah
of
Open Lines,
reunion.
That will speak, right? I guess we.
Yes, we're just setting up the
We just
meetings.
set up the meetings. so
Right.
there'll be some-
But those are the dates Wendy gave me
Great,
that
that she's available.
she's available, right.
Great.
Anyway,
Right, I
that's
think
all
we
I've
go
got.
Spencer.
That's great.
So,
Cool.
Trying to find a date for that car show.
I think it was already, wasn't
Yeah, the 22nd, 23rd of June.
it? Yeah.
And their rodeo's like July. like
So
24,
maybe we could talk to
right?
Spencer and
Yeah.
see if there's something coming up, I don't know, somebody's reunion or,
Good figure.
gosh, I don't know. Or, you know, what about fair days? Is there anything we can do? Have a booth? Can we do anything?
We could probably put a booth up in the farmer's market.
Yeah,
Do we wanna,
what's more, we have to be careful about
do we
not
want,
promoting the bond
right,
That may be something Utah Open Lands would do.
can do. Yeah.
or like be in the parade or Swiss Days Parade or, I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
if it's worth
Could have
it.
a booth and have a Utah Open Lands, if they're willing, you know, put a booth together, some videos playing or something like that, but that's,
How
once
many
more,
are
we gotta
you
be careful
hitting?
about how we,
Yeah, we can't, yeah, they'd have to do it. But I think the mailers going to everybody's home's gonna hit more of them anyway, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know. Anyway, that's all I've got.
that's great, no, thank you, that's really helpful. So the other thing we had to talk about was, we talked about doing criteria. I think this actually ties in more to our first discussion with, regarding the actual bond language with Randy, because we'll have to do a resolution with that too, and the resolution will sort of talk about criteria a bit, but we talked about, you know, coming up with the criteria that we're going to use in reviewing and approving applications. And I'm still, and you heard this from Randy this morning, earlier too, still hesitant to lock us down too hard on what that criteria is, but I took, you know, I took some of the criteria we'd come up with previously and put it in like a chart format. And it's something that Wendy could probably dress up a lot better.
Okay?
But, you know, in my view, we can maybe do it in a different format, but as close to coming to a criteria that we're going to use, you know, what we've discussed previously was types of land, and sort of intrinsic criteria is what I called it, but this is like, you know, intrinsic to every piece of land, and then the preservation tools that we're going to use. I think if somebody came to me and said, you know, how are you going to consider each property, what I would say first is, well, I'm going to look at the type of property it is, right? Is it something that we actually want to preserve, right, in its current status? Is it agricultural land, grazing land, watershed, viewshed, wildlife habitat, public access corridor, wildlife migration corridor? Is it a current common land of some kind that the public uses and thinks is public land, but turns out it's not, right? That's what I meant by that last one. And then once I determine that it falls in that category, the type of land that we do want to preserve, then I'd move to sort of the intrinsic character of the application itself. How willing is the landowner to participate, right? And this, I think, would be a sliding scale, right? There may be some viewshed or watershed that's so valuable that even though the landowner is not incredibly willing to participate, I still say, yeah, we probably ought to go after these guys because of the benefit that we're going to derive. Whereas, you know, if it's just some rangeland out in a corner of Fruitland or something, you know, recently burned up, then we might say, you're going to have to participate pretty hard on this one for it to be. So anyway, that's how I think those two play in together. And when you look at each individual application, I would anticipate that we would look at the landowner's willingness to participate, the community benefit derived, the community cost, both short and long term, in locking this up in a local municipality participation. So I would say, you know, we might look to Midway if their bond passes to participate on some things that are there. State and federal participation for each individual property, third-party donor participation. So, you know, are we leveraging with all those environmental benefits and then the heritage benefits, which is like the rural heritage of the community. Those are the intrinsic criteria I came up with and drew from our PowerPoint. And then finally, with each property, I would look at it and say, okay, what tools are actually available to us to try to preserve this property versus conservation easements, but are there grants, private donors, state and federal money? Are there tax benefits that come into play in this property that aren't in others? And then what I mentioned a minute ago was, you know, cluster zoning and planned unit developments is actually a bit of a tie-over with our planning department. You know, I think they would be a really good referral source for us. We could go over and meet with those guys. Doug's great, you know, and sit down and say, hey, look, we now have a kitty that we can play with in conserving some space. When you get a new PUD that comes in, let's talk about open space, and open space that'll be beneficial to the community. And then the cost of community services savings, that's just one more, you know, tool that plays into it. So this is kind of and this is just the way my mind thinks, you know, so I laid it out in those categories. And like I said, to me, it's kind of a 1, 2, 3 process. First, is it the type of land? Next, does it have these intrinsic characters? And then, okay, what preservation tools are available to us on this? And to me, we would consider all of these criteria with every application that came in. And it would be, like I say, a